Today, we're looking at a cluster of stories that all touch on the same nerve, and that nerve is trust. In the last year, the federal government has frozen access to childcare and family assistance funds in 5 Democrat led states: California, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, and New York, citing serious concerns about widespread fraud in the state administered systems. Colorado officials say that they were swept into a response driven by alleged fraud in the Minnesota's child care systems. And so far, the public hasn't seen any detailed evidence of comparable fraud in Colorado itself. And now, at the same time, we have very real documented fraud inside Colorado's healthcare system. In 2024, the Colorado Attorney General charged a Denver Medicaid biller with allegedly submitting over $1.2 million in false claims for liquid nutrition products. Claims that, according to investigators, did not match what patients actually received. And we're going to talk about that case a little bit here today. And that's not a vague suspicion. It's a specific scheme that exploited billing systems and taxpayer-funded care. And the third thing that we want to look at is, and then there's our elections. The U.S. Department of Justice has sued Colorado for refusing to hand over unredacted statewide voter registration data, including names, dates of birth, addresses, and ID numbers. Federal officials say they're enforcing election laws, and the Colorado Secretary of State says she's protecting voter privacy and resisting overreach. And we've talked about that before. And none of these stories are simple. They're not just fraud or no fraud. They're about how we design oversight, how we share data, and how much we trust the institutions that manage childcare, healthcare, and elections. So today, instead of accepting the headlines at face value, we're going to map the stakeholders, the money flows, and the legal fights. So now I'd like to welcome my co-host here today, Miss Lynn. Hi.
Hello. Hi, Tracy. Hi, everyone.
And welcome to OpenAgenda.wtf, where the WTF stands for With the Facts. And so we're bringing some facts with you today. So what do you think about those 3 subjects, Miss Lynn?
Well, for me, the astounding thing was simply Googling fraud in Colorado. Brought up a plethora of pages of videos, articles. The surprising part is that there has been fraud going on in Colorado for a number of years. The types of fraud we're talking about today, we can track, I'm sure, farther back than 2020, but a lot of things happened between 20 and 24, even in Colorado. And a lot of things are pending. For instance, we talked about there were 3 big frauds committed by Nigerians in Colorado. So that's an interesting little wrinkle in the situation that creates more areas to be doing research. So it is just shocking that, that the oversight seems to be a big piece of what is missing in Colorado and in the country.
I think in the country, yes. And we looked up here today before we jumped on the channel here. The Common Sense Institute noted that about 42,000 migrants arrived in the Denver metro area between December 2022 and May 2024, of whom at least 1,800 had obtained work authorization. So that means that many others are still lacking regular immigration status. And that was just between 22 and 24, and that's 42,000.
42,000 by May of 24, right?
Right. And
And
1,800, only 1,800 had obtained work authorization.
wow.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very interesting. I
I
think
wanted to bring up this document. I think you sent this to me, Lynn, from the Common Sense Institute. And this article just talks about how fraud really impacts everybody and everything in Colorado. So the key findings were an estimated 375 million in direct reported losses, 2.5 billion in unreported losses. Why would it be unreported? And how do they know if they're not reported? Sorry.
2.5 billion with a B.
Yeah.
Unreported. Wow. That means they don't know where it went.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The state's general
Unemployed?
fund will lose an estimated 88 million, the general fund, in tax revenue due to financial fraud. CSI estimates fraud reported alone will have the following impact on the economy in 2025. $954 million reduction in the state GDP, 932 million reduction in statewide personal income. Those are big numbers.
Wow.
And a
Yeah.
loss of approximately 6,628 jobs. That's really something. This is coming from the Common Sense Institute of Colorado. And the website is commonsenseinstituteus.org. So if y'all want to take a look at this, it's
That's pretty
very
comprehensive.
substantial.
Mm-hmm. Wowza. And what's happening is we're looking at fraud that covers so many areas: housing, childcare, senior care or family care. It's identity theft. It is unemployment theft. It is Medicaid and SNAP. So there are so many potential mismanaged oversight. And I think part of the problem too, Tracy, is that they haven't created the systems to be integrated with one another. Like, for instance, how long does it take someone who has died to show up in social services as a deceased person? How long does it take all of that to get integrated?
Right. I think we talked about that last month at some point. Yeah, and it is how these departments can talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
There's just too many gaps that just invite fraud for those who are less than honest.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the childcare and family assistance fraud concerns prompted the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to, as I said, freeze funds for those 5 states: California, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, and New York, citing serious concerns about widespread fraud. And the programs affected are the Child Care and Development Fund for 2.4 billion, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, which is 7.35 billion, and the Social Services Block Grant of 869 billion. So let's go to the HHS website here. So here you can see those numbers.
This is federal, right? These are federal level dollars.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's also, we're going to see a lot of spin around this, right? When that type of funding is being withdrawn from the state, we're going to hear a lot of people falling on their swords for the children, right? It's always how are families going to, who is this going to hurt?
It's hurting
And
the citizens, right? And, and you're picking on 5 states is what they're going to say.
yeah,
And it does say in this article that the funds will remain frozen until ACF completes a review and determines that states are in compliance with federal requirements. So
what's
I
ACF?
don't know how long that's going to take, but
You know what ACF is, Tracy?
the
Oh,
yeah.
it's right up here at the top. I see Administration of Children and Families is,
Oh, here it is.
yeah, the
No,
Administration
it's
for
part of
Children.
HHS, and it's the Administration for Children and Families. Childcare and Development Fund, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, which is the TANF, and Social Services Block Grant.
Mm-hmm.
That's all inclusive. And letters were sent to the governors of those 5 states, it says, and the ACF notified them that access to these funding streams is now restricted pending further review, which impacts the following totals. So,
Which totally makes sense. If this were a business
oh,
and we
yeah.
found there was money just flowing out the back door, you wouldn't keep giving money to that business, right?
Right. That's right. This is
So,
how some of the mainstream media is covering this. Um,
mm,
let's see, this is only a minute long. So,
Administration
okay.
raised $10 billion in federal child care funds to 5 states run by Democrats. So Schultz is in Washington. The latest on that. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning, George. This is $10 billion in federal funding that was approved by Congress to help hundreds of thousands of families pay for childcare. The Department of Health and Human Services has now frozen access to those funds in 5 states with Democratic governors: California, Colorado, Minnesota, Illinois, and New York. Funds are still flowing to all other states, including Republican-led Mississippi, where jury selection kicked off this week in a major scandal where federal funds for social services were allegedly misused. Now, the Trump administration.
So to me, it sounds like they're spinning it that they're picking on the Democratic states. And she does mention what just happened with that and the Republican state. So it's interesting the way that they spin this.
Is saying that families deserve confidence that these resources are used lawfully and for their intended purpose, adding that those 5 Democratic states won't be able to access the money until a review looking to what it calls widespread fraud is complete, but officials are not providing any evidence of widespread fraud at this point. Last week, they pulled funds for childcare centers in Minnesota after a conservative YouTuber's viral video spread unverified allegations of fraud at daycares. And this comes as the cost of daycare and preschool nationwide for families is up 4.
Here we go. The kids are the ones that are going to suffer, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the cost is up 4.7%.
7% in the past year. That is almost double overall inflation. And like other recent cuts that we've seen to federal programs, this move will hit low-income families the hardest. Robin.
Rose.
Yep. So.
And so they defend the fraudsters instead of being like, too bad. We could have used the billions of dollars that have disappeared to help all these people.
Yes, yes. And that's the point, although nothing has been proven yet in the state of Minnesota. According to the allegations, they're skimming all of this money off the top from citizens and taxpayers, sending it abroad, funding who knows who or who knows what. And yes, the people who really need it are the ones who are getting hurt.
That's right.
They just need to put a stop to all of this craziness. And this is CNBC, and this is their headline. Yeah, all 5 states targeted by the freeze, California, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, and New York, are led by Democrats. That's one of their bullet points. Not talk about the fraud. Let's talk about what the policies are.
Right. What party?
Yeah, what party are you?
Where are the party lines? Yes.
That's crazy. That's just crazy to me.
Yeah. And it is it is all part of just this resistance to respecting the federal government. Any other country, if states go and separate from the federal government and make up their own rules, we don't really have a cohesive, unified country. And that's really what we want to inspire, is more collaboration, more unity. It's frightening right now with the division and the divisiveness that's happening.
It is very frightening. And when you're always trying to divide the people, and when that happens, it's a revolution. And I don't think we should be shy in saying that, because when there's this degree of division and what has just been happening with people trying to run over ICE agents, it's really scary out there.
It is really scary. We're definitely on the verge of what could be a civil war.
Oh, I think we're already in it in many, many ways. There's such division out there, and it all goes back to politics. I guess that's politicians run the country, and
that is the political system.
Right.
It's part of Nick Freitas. He's one of the YouTubers that I like to listen to. Explained it so well, how the political system is really set up to be this machine that lobbyists ask for what they're looking for, or fraudsters ask for protection. Politicians get money funneled back into their election account. And it's exactly the way the system is set up to work. That's why it is like turning the Titanic, trying to make these changes that make the system work properly.
Yeah.
And having people that want to make it work properly.
Yes. And I'd heard that before, that it's set up. It's running the way that it was set up to run. And that's it's not a really great thing to dwell upon for too long, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, but let's move directions here and and talk about this case, the Medicaid fraud charge.
Yes.
Attorney General Phil Weiser, he announced the fraud and theft against that Denver woman accused of submitting 1.217,933 false Medicaid claims. And
That's the one for the liquid nutrition?
Yeah, the product was the Eternal Formula liquid nutrition for patients unable to consume enough food orally. And she submitted the false claims for that product, and they weren't actually provided, So here we go again, and this is in Colorado. Let me pull up his website here. Yeah, so this is telling you a little bit more about what happened, and at least they're catching some fraud here in Colorado, and that's a lot of money. That's taxpayer dollars. It could be federal. It could be federal a little bit in there, but now that they've frozen funds, I guess it's just taxpayer dollars. We're funding all of this, right?
Right.
Who comes up with these schemes?
And we're funding all of these control units that have to go out and investigate. They've got one for Medicaid fraud control. They've got one for unemployment, another entity to do the research there. It'd be interesting to know what is the vetting process and why is it not being adhered to? There's got to be some kind of checks and balances that apparently are not being adhered to in the process.
And there's the checks and balances have to be different for each of these programs.
Mhm.
So that's where I think a lot of the problem comes is there's so many programs out there to help the people, and all it is a slush fund out there, although it does help people. And I like that cause, but think of how many programs we have going on in every state and federally. Um, and it's just too much, That's why they can't track down all the fraud is there's too many programs out there. I wouldn't want the job of having to um, figure out where the fraud lies.
No kidding.
No
Oh
wonder
my
they
goodness.
have such a big department there, HHS. My goodness, I don't know.
So, do you think this is connected to the suit that is being brought against Colorado for the lack of release of the voter information, et cetera? Do you think any of this is connected?
Oh, absolutely. I do, in my opinion.
Mm.
Yeah, the Department of Justice filed lawsuits against Colorado, Hawaii, Massachusetts, and Nevada for failing to comply with its federal election laws by not producing the statewide voter registration list when they were asked to do that. Jenna Griswold refused to provide unredacted voter data, including things that they were needing, like the names, date of birth, addresses, and so forth. And these lawsuits access voter data. And again, it comes back to illegal immigration. It comes back to fraud, I do believe.
Mhm.
And maybe I'm off base. You can argue that point with me in the comments below, but no, I think that the Department of Justice suing Colorado for the voter records, I think it is all interrelated. I really do.
And it all has a lot to do with what you mentioned at the beginning, trust. When trust is eroded, then you become skeptical or cynical about anything or everything that this government or that government is trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So I've lost a lot of trust. And I think one reason why we started this venture of OpenAgenda.wtf is that we were frustrated. And I remember back in the 70s and 80s, I could care less about politics,
Sure.
And I guess as you get older, you realize that it just affects so many parts of your life that you have to be involved. And I think that people used to trust um, our government much more than what they do today. Maybe it's just where we are at now with our phones and our media, and we're not just being fed something from 3 different news sources, right? Like it used to be. Today, it's so much different. And maybe that's the reason there's so much distrust.
Yeah, I feel the same. I didn't used to pay much attention to politics. I've pretty much voted most of my adult life, but have trusted that the government is going to do what the government's going to do. But
And they may have been doing that for a long, long
yeah,
time, and we
for
just
a
did
long
not know it. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And there's also a theory or, a theory that this is a plan from a bigger perspective that is designed to bring division,
Let's divide
change,
the country.
change the fabric of our country. It's part of the blueprint on how to
Overthrow a
take
government,
over.
maybe?
Yeah, how to overthrow a government. Totally. You got it.
Yeah. And then there's the situation with Venezuela. Interesting enough that we were able to, our fantastic military was able to get in there and get Maduro. Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like there's starting to be some cooperation and that things are gonna smooth out there.
But yeah, all that being said, I still, yeah, it does feel like that they are creating a division in the United States of America and a potential potential way to overthrow our government as we know it. There's a lot going on out there. Definitely. So do we have answers?
Answers.
Yeah. Well, I do have a couple documents and I'll put them up. Put a link to those in the description below. And one is how to request documents, the open records documents in Colorado.
Mhm.
Really great resource. Let's see here if I can. I know I can do this. Yes. Yeah, it's a great list. It tells you what type of public records that you can request. And
Mhm.
it has to be an effort by the citizens, by the people, by staying involved. But this is an excellent document that explains, what kind of records do you want? Where do you get those records from? And
Oh, that's great.
it's a great resource. And I'm going to link that so that everyone can have this information.
Mhm.
And then I created another document that explains how people can be on the lookout for fraud.
Okay.
Citizens, and this is the only way that we're going to solve some of these issues, right? Is to keep an eye out and as our civic participation and it has steps that communities, can take in order to keep an eye out for fraud. So we don't have answers for the fraud that's already been committed, or any of the fraud that seems to be pretty standard in these United States of America.
Mhm.
So
Sadly true. But that is why we have elections. We want to make sure that decisions are being made by the people that we actually vote for. And so this is an exciting time to get involved and to be aware of what's happening in your state during this upcoming election season. Because that's our best expression of our voice, as far as, getting the government lined up with what citizens really want.
very good point. But my mind's racing here. I was just going to ask your opinion on what is happening with these ICE agents being targeted by citizens. I wouldn't even imagine trying to interfere with law enforcement, and ICE is law enforcement,
Right.
and people are dying now. And what are your thoughts on that? These sanctuary cities,
It's so
we have politicians out there threatening to not let ICE into their communities, and they are trying to get illegal people that came over the border during the Biden years. They're trying to get those people out of our country. I mean, there's some bad hombres, right?
There is. And there's obviously some people who want to keep them here for whatever nefarious reasons. We've heard all of the reasons. It's a new voting bloc for the Democrats. For whatever it is, I'm sure it's deeper than we will be able to unearth, but there is definitely going to be some changes happening.
Yeah, and that's why I think there's rumblings of civil war when these communities are not cooperating with the federal government. That's a division. That is war. that civil war, you know.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I wouldn't dream of interfering with any kind of law enforcement officer who is doing his job. And the fact that people are doing that just really blows my mind. It just shows a total lack of respect. I suppose it shows a lack of trust again. And part of it is just the derangement syndrome that we're not going to cooperate with anything this administration does. And that is, that is not how we need to be responding to our government.
Not at all. He was voted in. You know, citizens of the United States tasked him to clean up the border, to get rid of the illegal people here that are living off the system. And now we see all of this fraud and the billions of dollars, and who knows where all of that is going to lead, right? It's a little bit startling where we're at right now in this day and time.
Which is why we need to stay in community with one another. We need to communicate, collaborate, create unity and inspiration and love, and be aware of the facts and trust. Yes, but we need to definitely be finding our own path to find the truth.
It takes a village to do something like this, right? We need to stay on track and to be involved. And yep. Pretty awesome. But anyway, if we don't pay attention, what happens?
Guess what? Somebody else will write the rules.
That's
We
right.
want to be writing our own rules.
Right. Thanks, everybody. Join the conversation, and be sure to follow us, to subscribe to our channel so that you know when you will see our beautiful faces again. So
Super.
thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Tracy. See you soon.
Okay, bye.